How's it going, everyone? This is Mike, and I'm here to talk about a movie that I just watched that I rented, and I was so impressed by it that I thought I would just jump in front of my little camera here and talk about it. And usually, when I do a video, I plan it for a couple of days and obsess about it and write down what I want to say and try to make it somewhat professional. Ha, yeah. And so this time it's all just off the top of my head. As you can see, there's not much on the top of my head. I will do the best I can. I am in my computer room, which, as you can see, is turning into a Star Trek room. I've accumulated so much Star Trek stuff in the years since I converted to Trekism that I'm putting it all in one place. So it's coming together pretty well. And Mr. Spock is behind me here, watching over me as I make a complete fool of myself. So, Mr. Spock, would you like to say a few words to the group? I guess not. Okay. Mr. Spock is kind of shy. You know how Vulcans are, they just don't say very much. All right. The movie I watched, which I rented, by the way, don't have a cover to show you, but I can show you the package. It's called A Kind of Murder. A Kind of Murder. Picked it up at my family video. Had never heard of this movie, and I was just looking at the shelves because they called me up and said, hey, you have a couple of free rentals coming. I said, okay, fine, I'll go down and see what there is. And was having trouble finding something, and I just picked this out, read the synopsis, and I thought, okay, this looks interesting, without knowing anything at all about it. And wow, what a discovery! I thought it was a really good movie. The thing is, this is it's 2016, filmed in 2016. It's a modern day film noir, which what that usually means is that someone is doing an homage to the noir style of the 1940s and 1950s, and some people do it better than others, and some people do it just they're giving you so much ambiance and so much um, obvious imitation of that style that that's all you can focus on. They don't necessarily have a great story to go with it. But these people, they knew how to do it. They had all the ambiance, they had all the clothes, the style, the lighting, but they also had a very good story. The story is based on a novel by Patricia Highsmith. The novel was called The Blunderer. Okay, now Patricia Highsmith, I've never read any of her books. Of course, she also wrote the novel that became the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley, which I've also seen. Another brilliantly conceived story. So, yeah, good writer and translated to a good film. I don't know how much they changed, but the film takes place in New York City in 1960. So they got the period, they got it down pat. They did it beautifully. The location, I'm not sure exactly where they filmed it, but they got the cars, the clothes, but none of those things. I mean, it all seemed appropriate, but the most important thing was the story. I just got involved in the story. So let's talk about the cast first of all. The star of the film is a guy named Patrick Wilson, who was no relation to me. For those of you who don't know, my last name is Wilson. I know I've seen this guy before, but I can't pinpoint any films that he's been in, but he had a very familiar face. Jessica Biel is in it, and again, that's another name that I know of, and she looks familiar, but I couldn't tell you anything else she's been in. That's how out of touch I am. Also, Vincent Kartheiser, Eddie Marsan, that's Marsan, I guess that's how it's pronounced, and a young actress named Haley Bennett. And I think I've heard of the name Haley Bennett, but I'm not sure. So the story is that Patrick Wilson plays a guy named Walter Stackhauser, who is a very successful, very wealthy architect in New York City. He has designed the house that he lives in, which is out in the suburb. Looks like something out of House Beautiful from the year 1960. It's perfect. And he's married to Claire, played by Jessica Biel. They've been married for 4 years, and it's not a happy marriage. She has some emotional problems. She's very depressed. She's paranoid. She's very jealous and very controlling. Very unhappy woman. And he's been trying to get her to get some help, and she won't do it. And she has tried to commit suicide several times. So Walter Stackhauser has sort of a second job. It's a hobby. He writes short stories that are murder mysteries, and he's sort of successful. We find out at the beginning of the movie that he's just had something published in a mystery magazine, so he's very happy about that. His wife's not supportive at all. But one of the things he does in order to get ideas for writing stories is he clips things out of the newspapers, stories about murders and mysteries and things that haven't been solved, and puts them in a scrapbook. Now, one of the stories that he's clipped out is about a man named Kimmel, who is sort of an older man, very unassuming man, who owns a bookstore, and this man's wife was found murdered at a bus stop, a diner, several miles from New York City, and the mystery hasn't been solved. And the detective who's on the case, a guy named Corby, is a very obsessive policeman who just will not let something go. He is convinced that Kimmel murdered his wife, even though he has an alibi, he has a witness that he was at a movie, right? A great opening for the film. It shows a movie theater that is showing Elizabeth Taylor in Butterfield 8. So that's kind of cool. Sets the tone for the whole film, I guess. Anyway, so Walter Stackhauser is interested in, he finds himself fantasizing about what life would be like if his wife just didn't exist, and he starts fantasizing about killing her. It's not that he's planning to kill her, but he's just thinking about it. As a writer, he's interested in details and scenarios and what makes people do things that they do. So he goes to visit this man named Kimmel in his bookstore, which, by the way, is an amazing little set piece of an old kind of a rundown building, and a place that's filled up with rare books, first editions, lots of dust everywhere, and just a really interesting ambiance. And so there's a connection between the two of them. And the people watching the film, me watching the film, I wasn't sure if this Kimmel had actually killed his wife until later on as the film developed. It was kind of up in the air. I wasn't really sure. But so what happens is, excuse me, without giving too much away, because I don't want to spoil things, but Stackhouse's wife, Claire, takes a bus, and she is found dead at the same diner, the same area where Kimmel's wife was found murdered. So we're not sure, did she commit suicide, or did this guy, with all the details coming in and the connection between these two men and the obsessive nature of Corby the detective pinning these two things together, because it's too coincidental, right, to be just a coincidence, and he is determined to find the truth. So Walter finds himself being pursued not only by the detective, but by Kimmel, and thrown into the mix is the fact that Walter has met a young woman named Ellie Bryce, played by Haley Bennett, a young woman who is the exact opposite of his wife. She's sort of a beatnik singer. Well, she is a beatnik singer, and she's very sexy, very free-spirited. She lives in Greenwich Village, and he goes to see her in the club. He becomes involved with her, and anyway, she represents the freedom that he would like to have, the kind of life that he would like to be able to live with a woman who is very exciting and actually appreciates him, and it adds to his the complications in his mind about wanting to kill his wife but not really doing it. But anyway, it's just a great story, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who may not have seen it, because I am so glad that I discovered this and didn't know anything about it, because it was very exciting and surprisingly free of violence. I mean, there was some violence, especially at the end, but I guess in a way it was appropriate for what was happening. But man, they did a good job with this, and I need to do some research about all the director and the actors, and I looked up on Wikipedia very briefly just to see find out a few details about the film. And I don't think it was very successful. I think it came and went very quickly, which is a real shame because I think this is something that was very well done by everybody concerned. Anyway, so let me just give you a very strong recommendation. If you would be interested in seeing a modern day film noir that is actually done well, and if you like involving mystery stories, this may be something you would like. Okay, so let me know if you heard of this movie, A Kind of Murder from 2016. So comments are welcome. Good night.